Hey everybody, and welcome back to Spilling Tea with the G's, Season 2, Episode 5, I believe it is. Again, I'm Nick Galrakis, my brother Steve, as always. Here we are for our next episode, and it's with our good friend Stephen Heaviside. And Stephen is a survivor, he's a guy, and he's been around the block with a lot of different support groups, and sometimes being the only guy in the room when it comes to those support groups as well. And so we wanted to talk with him what it's like being a guy in a very female-dominated support areas and support groups, because most guys don't like to come out of their shell and talk about what they go through. And I know, Steve, you can relate to that. But so we were just thankful for Stephen coming on and talking to us and why it's so important to him and all the cool things that he's always looking to help people with. Right, Steve?
Yeah, it's going to be a really wonderful conversation because, as you said, Nick, he has been around the block and he has. He engaged with the community very early on after his treatment. That's a rarity for men for this demographic. So it'll be really wonderful to get to talk to our good friend Stephen, and then also just get his perspective on a world that is normally not seen through a man's eyes. I mean, it's unfortunate that we don't talk enough, but hopefully we'll get some good insight today.
Yeah, for sure. So again, sit back, relax. We have a great conversation with our buddy Stephen, and we may have had adult beverages during it too, since it was late at night. So all right, folks, enjoy Spilling Tea with the G's, episode 5 of season 2. And again, feel free to subscribe to our podcast as well, video cast, on YouTube. This way you can get updates every time there's a new episode coming out. All righty, so let's get to the episode. Sweet. So again, Steve, thanks for joining us on Spilling Tea with the G's. And so just kind of having that conversation, right, of being the guy, right? So we're going to talk about that a little bit here, being a guy in a very female-dominated support system when it comes to the young adult cancer space. But before we even do that, I think a lot of people watching this will probably have been in a hangout with you, potentially, whether it's Elephants and Tea, Stupid Cancer, Lacuna Lock, wherever else it might be. But tell a little about yourself, if you don't mind, to those listening to the video cast or meeting you for the first time. What would you say?
I would say I'm Stephen Heaviside from sunny Southern California. I'm a testicular cancer survivor, and I've been involved with the AYA community for going on about 6 years now, surprisingly enough. It doesn't feel that long, but then I also feel like I've known Stephen for like 2 decades, so the time-space continuum doesn't make sense anymore. Well, post-cancer and now post-COVID,
So I think that, it's funny for the amount that the three of us have now chatted since COVID started in March with all the Elephants and Tea hangouts. How did you two first meet? Was it CancerCon?
We met at CancerCon 2014.
Yeah, it was the first one, I think, right?
20. Did you go to the first? Oh, wait, no, I'm wrong. See, I'm already chemo braiding. 2015. 2015, because 2014, I was finished with treatment when I first went to CancerCon, and I had my treatment in 2014.
Okay.
So I was in the, looking back, especially in retrospect, I was in like the celebratory phase where I got the all clear. I was feeling kind of like PCHP is one of the phrases that comes up on some of the memes, but that kind of invincibility phase where I was feeling pretty good about things. And then, the next year was kind of like meeting people in the community and going to CancerCon and meeting Stephen at, it would have been 2015 CancerCon, right?
How many CancerCons have there been?
A lot.
I know it's no more than 5, but it's no less than.
2015 was the first one called CancerCon in Denver.
Okay, then yes, then that was the first one then, yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't know people when they were OMG. I didn't know that was a thing yet.
Which for people who don't know what we're talking about right now, before CancerCon was an event, they used to have an event in Las Vegas called the OMG conference. And they changed it to CancerCon to make it a little more inviting in a place that was a little more friendly than Las Vegas.
What year did
I think Vegas had some other problems too. That we don't have to spill the tea on that, but there were some other situations that Vegas sort of invited.
We'll skip that. It's funny. I was just did a quick Google search. I was like, when was the first CancerCon? And on the webpage, it goes back to 2016 to see photos and stuff like that. So,
yeah, it's kind of wild to think about, because then there was also like the OMG East and West events too. So I was at OMG West a couple times in like 2015, 2016 era, somewhere there, where there was like Italia Ricci from Chasing Life came out, and they had just like, the small scale version of CancerCon on the West Coast and the East Coast. So yeah, when I think back to all the different events, there's been a ton.
Have either of you missed a CancerCon since then?
I missed, and we can get into this, but I missed last year's, and I was going through just a really tough time personally with anxiety. And as I'm sure Stephen will attest to this too, and like some of the people watching this can relate, anxiety had started telling me that it wasn't a good thing for me to go to anymore. I had started thinking, if I go, it will, instead of having fun meeting up with Stephen and the people I know and meeting new people, I'd convinced myself that it would trigger more anxiety. Talking about cancer and PTSD, I just convinced myself, oh, I don't need this anymore. If anything, it'll make me feel worse about stuff, which could be true. But I think at the end of the day, that's the thing of anxiety being a liar and convincing you of kind of the worst case scenarios of things. So I actually do feel a lot of guilt that I didn't go last year, because there's cool people that I've met, whether it's via Instagram, Facebook, mutual AYA friends, and some of the Zoom meetups. It's like, oh, you know what? I could have hung out with them last year. I would have met them in person. We could have had a drink at CancerCon. And I totally missed it because I was just going through my own turmoil at the time.
Yeah. We could have met and had a drink. But obviously your anxiety was much more important to figure that out. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, what a lot of people who have had CancerCon now, and this event that's been going on for 4 years, and all these different organizations like Lacuna Loft and even Dear Jack Foundation, Teen Cancer America, it makes sense though. You're sitting about 4 to 5 years out from your treatment, and we all go through those kind of things, that anxiety, that PTSD, no matter what kind of cancer you've had and what kind of treatment you've had. So I know you feel guilty about it, but at the same time, man, you did more in the first 4 years of being post-cancer than I did in the first 10 years of being post-cancer.
Yeah, in retrospect, I really rushed into meeting other patients and survivors, which I'm kind of proud of myself for, because I've patted people on the back that I've met since. I've been amazed this year. People have hopped on some of these Zoom meetups. I'll be like, just kind of asking them what's their story. It's like, well, I was diagnosed in April. It's like, you were diagnosed in April, in the year of COVID, and you're already feeling like you want to talk to other people. That's amazing. That's great. That's even for myself. I remember I can vividly remember the social workers coming around when I was going through chemo, and I feel very thankful. I feel very spoiled that I was at USC. I was at a center of excellence where they are very progressive about this stuff, and that they did bring this stuff up to me. But they gave me a list. They said, there's Imran's Angels, there's Stupid Cancer, there's, because of my particular cancer, they gave me these testicular cancer websites and stuff. And to be honest, I remember looking at the list and just like throwing it on the side of my bed and just like, yeah, I don't want to like go to a support group with a bunch of guys crying about how awful things are right now. Like, I know things are terrible. Like, I don't think this is going to make me feel any better. And then it took a while of kind of lurking a little bit. I think I'd gone to Stupid Cancer's meetup page and saw that they did have, in the before times, in-person meetups. And I saw that was a thing. And I was like, maybe eventually I'll go to one of these things just to feel it out, see how it makes me feel. Like, I might make friends there. I don't know how this is going to go, if it's going to be real clinical or just kind of a loose atmosphere of people hanging out. And the first time I did go to one, I was still going through chemo. So I had, I was still in kind of hiding in plain sight mode. I had the hat on because I was totally pale and totally bald, had no eyebrows. just not feeling good about myself, and went to a stupid cancer meetup at this barbecue place. And the people there were so nice that I wonder what if I would have gone and not had a rapport with anybody, if I would have just been like, nope, I'll do this on my own. But the people I met were so cool and nice to me. And they were talking about, actually, OMG. They were saying how much fun they had in Vegas meeting other people. And then it kind of dawned on me that, oh yeah, these are just a bunch of young adults that were, hanging out and getting cocktails and just doing young adult stuff. They weren't sitting around talking about their treatment the whole day, even though I'm sure that was part of the commiseration. We do that too, but it just kind of dawned on me, oh, this would actually be a really helpful thing to talk to other people going through similar stuff.
So, and I guess this it's interesting, right? The conversation of being a guy and jumping into a support group. Statistically speaking, most dudes wait way longer to jump into some sort of support group than Stephen H. I'm going to say Stephen brother, Stephen H, just so I don't confuse it, right? One Steve A, Steve B. So I guess this is even a question for my co-host here of, did you both feel pressure to be a part of these groups being a guy? Was there some sort of stigma or some sort of stereotype that you ever felt that, you had to kind of be the tough ass and just put your head down and go through it? Or was it really just not in a priority, if you will, to jump into some of these support groups? Because Stephen H, what you mentioned to me, I remember the day that someone you had mentioned, right in April, May timeframe, this individual had just been diagnosed with serious cancer and decided to join this group. And you told me, like, I was just so shocked that this person was just wanted to jump right in for whatever reason. And I think that there's part of me that is almost terrified for that patient too, because sometimes, and you two can obviously chime in here in a second, but there's almost a sense of bliss in the ignorance of what's to come as a survivor or post-treatment. Hopefully you get to that point of the anxiety, of the stress that comes with it and everything else, right? But I'll stop talking and just ask for your guys' feedback just in general as a guy, right? And what that all entails.
It's so weird because I've never been a guy who thinks of myself as kind of buying into a lot of the typical macho guy culture at all. Like, I've never been that way. And my interests have never kind of leaned that way. I've been into sports and stuff and played Little League like most boys growing up and all that kind of thing. But especially as I got to my teenage years, I was into art and music and I was kind of leaning more in that direction. So I never fell for the whole macho guy stuff. But by the same token, I think so many things are kind of baked in in a societal sense, that there is a stigma of, if you play Little League or like playing sports as a kid, there's that little thing of like, you get upset or you get hurt. And sometimes the coach is like, suck it up. Like, don't cry. Like, let people see you cry. Meanwhile, it's like, yeah, let people see me cry. I'm having a hard time. That's part of life. I should be allowed to cry. But there is a little bit of that baked in, whether we realize it or not. Because I think part of why I didn't go to CancerCon last year was because I had felt like I was an upbeat presence at those things. And because I was lucky enough to have kind of made it out, at least in the short term. And I didn't want people to see me sweating. I didn't want people to see a depressed version of Stephen Heaviside. And I thought, oh, if I go during this period, and then also the embarrassment of, well, why do you feel so bad? Like, did your cancer come back? Oh no, it's just PTSD, anxiety stuff. It's almost like this embarrassment that, oh, I wish I had worse news to report because I feel so lousy. And it doesn't seem to be in proportion to what's actually happening. So I do think, yeah, a lot of that stuff is just kind of internalized, unfortunately.
Got it.
Well, and it's so funny that you say that, Steve, that that you felt embarrassed to go to CancerCon, because I know that I'm sure you're not the only person who has felt that way. And I say it's funny because let's both be honest here, that's the place you should be with those people, you know, because if anyone's going to understand, you know, what you're going through or what any of us are going through, it's going to be those people. So it just shows how much anxiety, for those who have never truly experienced anxiety, what it does to you, you know, and how it twists your mind into these, you know, contradictions, these cognitive dissonance moments. But as a guy, though, to answer your question, Nick, since you kind of posed it to both of us, I kind of agree with Stephen H. Is, you know, same kind of thing. I never felt like a macho man. Never felt like I had to not go to things. It was more of just I didn't, you know. And also, as you know, for me at least, and kind of, you know, what you said there, Stephen, how you came out so well and you felt embarrassed by that compared to other people. You know, I know that I've definitely had that survivor's guilt, you know, especially as the multitude of cancers that I've had have progressed. You know, you kind of go, wow, I've made it through all of these things, and now I'm going to go to, you know, an event and either scare the crap out of someone who's newly into this, which I've done before, and I've had to modify my story when someone asks me about my cancer if they're, you know, a freshly diagnosed person, you know, and that's and I do it because I don't want to scare people, but at the same time, it's hard on me, you know, to have to tweak my story because knowing what it can cause, the fear, the anxiety, and all of those things. But specifically about manliness, I think Stephen's right. I think it's just baked into our society that, you know, you have to be this tough guy, and when you're done, and you move on to the next problem, and that's life, you know. But I definitely felt that kind of sense of just, not that I don't need to go to them, but just why should I go to them? What do they have to offer to me? You know, and it wasn't until my mom browbeat me, you know, into going after she went to the OMG conference in Vegas and was like, you're going to love it. You have to go, you know, and you're right, though. Once you go there, though, it's this sense of relief. And I wish there was a better way to convey it to all people from the cancer community, but especially the men, you know, because it's definitely something that we as a gender suffer dramatically from the mental health side. And I don't know what, you know, specifics, you know, can be done to help remedy that issue, though.
I mean, it's also difficult too, because when I meet people that are newly diagnosed, or a lot of times I'm kind of known as the friend with cancer in different circles of friends. So I will get reached out to, hey, I've got this buddy, he's been diagnosed with testicular cancer. Like, could you talk to him? And I always kind of like try to navigate those conversations. And a lot of times I don't want to scare anybody, but I do feel like this veteran who has to give guys a heads up. I've definitely talked to guys who it's like, yeah, you know, I finished chemo on June and then I'm going to go back to work in like July. So, you know, I'll be good, dude. And I feel like Obi-Wan Kenobi being like normal life is not a thing. I've not heard that name for a long time. You know, but I don't want to scare them and freak them out and just tell them, hey, you have years of anxiety and depression and PTSD ahead of you, most likely. Like, why would I do that and ruin someone's day? But at the same time, I do want to give them an honest heads up, because I want to say, well, here's what's happened to me. Not that you'll go through this exact evolution and cycle, but just as an honest heads up, this might be a thing. And yeah, like going to support groups, speaking to a therapist, I know it feels almost like an embarrassment sometimes to have to reach out and be like, hey, I'm having a hard time. Like, because I've been there and it was hard for me to do that. And I've definitely had periods. I've really appreciated this year. We've had the Zoom meetups, and there's been tons of people I've been checking in on, have been checking with me. And I wish I would have been doing that pre-COVID. That's something I should have been doing these past few years, is reaching out more, especially when I was feeling down. And we can help lift each other up, because you do feel like a failure when it's like, I'm not doing well. But I always remember, I can't remember where I first heard this. Someone told me the reason to go to a therapist is because a broken computer can't fix itself. And I was like, oh man, that's good. I'm going to remember that. Because you could be the strongest, smartest person in the room, but you can't fix yourself.
You know, and And you're so right. And that's such a great analogy that, a computer can't fix itself. Because I was actually gonna ask you, through these last couple of years of being the cancer friend, and having to talk to people and stuff, have you found a way that is, and I know everybody's different, but have you found a way to get your information across to the men you've had to talk to? I mean, has it become an easier process, or is it still just as difficult as it was to talk to these guys, talk to us?
I think it's still just as difficult because there's also different levels, and depending on the situation, my approach is different. Like if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, will you talk to my friend? He just got diagnosed." It's like, well, he's not coming to me though. So I don't know if he even wants to talk to someone like me yet. He might not be ready for that. And everyone kind of has to move at their own speed. So I definitely don't want to scare someone who is only being like kind of pushed by a friend or a parent to talk to me, because they're probably not going to be in a place where they're going to open up to me, a total stranger, about their insecurities and anxieties and what they're going through.
I was going to say real quickly, and you and I both know, Stephen, I'll hand it back over to you, Nick, that, especially when you're diagnosed, your brain is so fried.
Yeah.
You don't even know what to ask. You don't even know where to begin. Yeah. I think if someone had directed me to talk to someone who had cancer right away, I would have been like, cool, man, you want to hang out and watch TV, I guess? Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back, and the timeline gets a little fuzzy for obvious reasons, but it took me about 6 months before I talked to another cancer patient or survivor, which I think was maybe a good amount of time because I was just processing a lot, and it still feels early on to have gone to a meetup or anything like that, because my brain was still scrambled, and I didn't even have the good news of being all clear yet. I didn't know where things were going to end up, if I was going to need an extra surgery after the chemo. Everything was kind of swirling in my brain for months. But I do think it was kind of good to sit with for at least a little bit of time before I talked to other people about it. Because at least it gave me some time to kind of formulate my thoughts on what I was going through. And then the other funny thing too is because you never know who's going to really help you, is the other thing I would say to newly diagnosed people. Because I think in the beginning, you kind of want to talk to someone that has the same cancer as you, right?
Right.
Because it's like, you want information. But as I quickly found, I don't know, I mean, Stephen might agree or disagree, then those people I didn't necessarily have a rapport with, or we had different treatment. So it wasn't relatable. And then I would end up meeting someone at CancerCon who was a cervical cancer survivor, but her timeline of events matched up with mine almost exactly. And she went through chemo. So I could joke with her about chemo brain and ask her if she was going through some of the same side effects I was going through. And then I felt way better, because then I didn't feel alone and I didn't feel crazy that this other person had been through something super similar.
So it's interesting you mentioned that, Stephen, and I'm gonna go back to something both of you said in a second here, but to your comment just of matching up cancers to support each other, right? Versus the cycle of what you went through. I think that is so true. And a lot of what we've done in the past 2 years with Elephants and Tea, that's become more and more evident to us. A lot of people are always like, oh, why aren't your stories matched up cancer to cancer? So people know, like, I have this cancer, I want to search this. We're finding though, that's not why people are coming to us. They actually want to know about certain specific things. Like you mentioned of, I went through chemo, I have chemo brain. Who else has chemo brain? That has nothing to do necessarily with the type of cancer you have. What I have found though, is if there's specific surgeries that come with certain cancers, right? I think that is more, and I see you both nod your head, so that's a good thing. That seems to be the more relatable piece. And I think also why the breast cancer community is as tight as it is, because of the certain situation that they have when it comes to body imaging and manipulation and things of that nature from surgeries. But for the most part, I think you're so right that a lot of people don't necessarily, they are worried at first on talking with someone that has the same type of cancer, but as they go through survivorship or more treatments, they realize that most cancer patients are in the same boat with a lot of different things. I want to circle back on the conversation of you two both, and I'm laughing how this is kind of becoming an interview for both of you, but I think it's just so relevant, right? Not intended how we were going here, but I have found myself. You mentioned Stephen H. I should call you PH and him V, right? But with the comment you made about someone in the community is like, oh, this person has cancer. Do you want to talk to him? I guess it's kind of a two-part question. Is one, do you find that it's mostly guys that people bring up to you because you're a guy? And then two, is it kind of like overwhelming to a certain point, or do you kind of get to the point where like, I don't want to be someone else's shoulder, if that makes sense? And I don't mean to come off as kind of, blunt about that, but I think it's important, right, for both of you or for people that are in a similar situation, that when is it okay to say, you know what, I just can't, I'm not that I don't want to help this person, but I'm just not me right now. Does that make sense where I'm going with that question?
Yeah, although and even in my darkest moments, like I will always try to help the community and always like try to be an advocate in some way. So as awkward as it is sometimes when people come to me with those requests or conversations, I'm happy to try and help out. And they've gone a few different ways, obviously. Sure. But it's just funny because sometimes it'll be like the person's mom or partner reaching out on their behalf, trying to get them to open up. And then some guys are tough nuts to crack, no pun intended. Too soon.
Is it though?
But because I've definitely had those where I've talked to a guy and he's kind of faded, he's drifted off. Like, and I tried to put my social worker hat on, I've tried to put my mentor hat on and check in with them, and they're just like, I'm all good. I don't need to talk to you anymore. I'm like, all right, that's cool. Like, I don't want to infringe, and and if you don't have a rapport, you don't have a rapport. That's okay. And then there's been others where I did an event at CHOC, Children's Hospital in Orange County, and I was at the Stupid Cancer table, and I had a few people come up to me and said like, oh, like they'd never heard of Stupid Cancer and they were curious about it, and they were talking to me. And there was a woman there. She said her son was 19 and he was just diagnosed, and she thought I would be a friendly, safe person to talk to. And I was like, yeah, for sure. Like here's my, if he needs someone to talk to, I would be happy to kind of mentor him. And I never heard from him. But at the same time, he's 19, he's a surly teenager and probably is not ready to talk to some random guy about his cancer treatment. But that's his mom looking out for him and being like, you know what? He's sulking around the house. He needs an outlet. He should talk to somebody. But there's no guarantee that the guy is going to take us up on that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I've had almost probably the exact same experiences for people where it's been a friend of someone or a parent, and they're kind of pushing that, and you might get a hi hello every so often after you made that initial contact, but usually it's a non-response, And to Nick, to your question though, I get massive anxiety about talking to people who have been recently diagnosed. And that's even before my, these last diagnoses on my third and fourth, but now I don't even know if I'm qualified to anymore. And part of that is because, talk about scaring the crap out of someone. Like, oh, by the way, your treatment could give you if you have wonky genes, your treatment could give you multiple crazy cancers. And, like it could be 15 years later. It's just, how do I tell my story without scaring the crap out of someone? And also being, I had cancer last year, but for my original diagnosis, I am about to be 15 years out come March. And it just seems like an entirely different landscape to me. It's just the things that are out there, the tools that are out there for people. And then just also just the stuff that I went through and how I went through it, it's just, I don't know if my experience, I mean, obviously I have experiences that are applicable in from, how do I put this? Like the PTSD side, the depression, anxiety, those individual things that we all experience, I can help with. But I really do get a lot of anxiety about talking to people because the second they ask you, well, what kind of cancer do you have? Like, well, so
4-part.
Which one do you want to know about?
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know. That's the hard thing too, is I do want to be helpful to people. I do want to be an advocate, but yeah, it's hard not to have anxiety when people come to you, because you have this like weight on your shoulders a little bit.
Well, and you probably know deep down that if you're in their shoes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Steve.
I don't know how much of my story will be relatable to this person. I mean, I've had people come to me with this person's story is so similar to yours. You got to talk to this guy. And I'm like, well, I hope so, if he wants to talk to me. Like, because I probably could help with some pointers. Like, hey, this guy went through a breakup right as he was going through chemo. Like, oh yeah, that's the Steve Heaviside story. Like, I could help with that if he wants the help. But if he doesn't want the help, I don't want to twist somebody's arm and try to force them to be my friend or something,
Yeah, because I can tell you for a fact that if someone would have tried to talk to me when I was 15 and then again when I was 19, I would have told them to take a flying leap, because I just didn't care. I wanted to be done with cancer. I don't know about you. I mean, I obviously you went to CancerCon pretty soon after, but
yeah,
I wanted nothing to do with this world.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Some people just want to retreat from all of it, which I get, but I don't know. I think like it's a ghost that's still gonna come back and haunt you, even if your health is good. There's emotional stuff. There's just a lot going on that I think the community is so valuable. And because I was thinking about this earlier in the week when I was kind of thinking about this topic of at CancerCon, we had the Just for Guys session, which I thought was a really positive thing. And it was guys opening up. But then thinking about it now, I'm almost like, but we should be able to do that. Like, we shouldn't have to be in a room full of guys. Like, you should be able to be that vulnerable in any of the spaces at CancerCon. And if, you shouldn't worry that there's like, oh, there's like a cute woman in here. Like, I can't tell my story. Like, no, tell your story. Like, it's fine. Like, and if anyone judges you for crying or getting emotional, then you don't have to be friends with them or anything like that. But
and you and I both know, Stephen, though, it's such a, it's so deeper than beyond that. Having been in those conversations with some of those guys, some of it's so cultural and so family driven in the way they feel about things. I obviously don't want to talk about what was spoken in those sessions.
No.
But based on culture, some of these men, I mean, they were, almost like ostracized by their families for showing weakness.
Yeah, that stuff gets bottled up, and then it's got to come out somewhere. So thankfully, it comes out in something like the Just for Guys session. But yeah, and maybe this is from my own experience in the last year or so, like going to therapy and things. It's like you need those release valves in your life. You need therapy or a friend to talk to, or an AYA support group, like, because otherwise, yeah, you're just gonna bottle that up and not be happy. Well, I really wish those guys that, and I don't, some of the guys in the, we're not gonna name names, like some of the guys in there I know better than others, but I don't know that they have that release on a consistent basis. I would hope that they do. Sure. I would like to think that they do, but I think for some guys, that's their like one, emotional dump for the year. And that's like a scary proposition, because I think you've got to get feelings out and communicate constantly in relationships, not just like romantic ones, like with your parents, family, friends, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, to just think that we have tons of guys in the community that are bottled up is the thing that bums me out. Because if I can be a model for anything, like I promise you, being vulnerable is, it's this thing you think is going to be bad, right? Or you think you're going to be judged on it. And it's like, if anything, you'll kind of be congratulated for just like coming out with it. And people will see that, like my therapist talked about this, of like certain things you think are a weakness are actually strengths. It's like, I'm a pretty extreme empath. And a lot of time that drags me down. I'm like can we curse on this show?
Yes.
Yes.
I just think about the Jay-Z lyric, just read an article that fucked up my day. And I'm totally that person. Like if I read, an article about war-torn countries or something, and I'm like, my day's ruined. I'm just like, I'm in empathy overdrive and I can't not think about that stuff. And that's really hard to get around, but empathy can be a strength too. And the same thing with vulnerability, where it's like, you think of it as being this thing that's shameful or you shouldn't get out. But if you actually do it, people will respect it and appreciate it. Especially, I thought about this with my piece I wrote for Elephants and Tea, where I had, the day it went live, I had kind of a panic attack of just that like pre-show jitter panic phase of like, the show's tonight, man, okay, I'm nervous. Like, I hope people enjoy this. I'm like, I hope I don't get laughed off the stage. And you get that, I'm about to be judged for something feeling, kind of like warm wash of shame comes over you. And then I got such nice feedback from it of, Stephen, this is really a vulnerable thing to share. And then I was immediately glad I did it. Once I got, even like the first text message I got from somebody about it, I instantly was like, oh, this is like therapy. It's like you come out with it and it actually, you feel totally liberated that you said the thing out loud that you didn't want to say maybe.
Very cool.
And that's probably the message, if we can probably give one big message from our last 15, 20 minutes, is the need to be vulnerable, and conveying that to men, that it's not, to anybody, but specifically, to our gender, that it's a strength to show your weaknesses. It's a strength to say, I need to fix something. And it's not that you're broken as a human, as you said, a computer can't fix itself, you don't want a broken car. If you got a bum wheel, you fix it. So if something's not working right up top, for whatever reason, from the trauma, from cancer, from the chemotherapy, the chemo brain, the anxiety post, everything, it's a good thing to talk about how you're feeling, because one, no one around you is ever going to know if you don't tell them, and as you said, communication, no matter what kind of relationship it is so important. And I feel like if we could just get that message to men, that just, if you can be a little vulnerable and communicate those feelings, how much better your life will be in the long run, and how much faster you will heal, from this trauma that we call cancer,
Like I think back to when I first started dating again, post-treatment, was this really weird time. And it was actually fun at first. And I actually felt like, you know what, I've got this crazy story. I just beat cancer. Because I was in that mode of like, I was kind of celebratory about it because I'd gotten the all clear. And I brought it up right away with women on dates, that, going out for coffee, going out for meals. And I would bring it right away. Like, yeah, I'm going to Austin for this cancer thing. And very quickly it went from fun to, I realized how intense I read to these people, from like looking at it from the other side. It's like,
Hell of an icebreaker.
This is really intense. And then sadly, the evolution of it, it went from that of like, oh man, I'm not being a good date. Like, this is too intense info to drop on somebody. Then I had the experience where it's like, oh no, this is going to be bad because I'm damaged goods. So I'm telling these women that I just had cancer and I have serious health problems and I'm in medical debt and I have one testicle and I don't know if I'll be able to have kids. Like, this is a nightmare situation, right? Like, it's just, oh, this is bad. And, it takes a while to kind of recover from that feeling of, oh man, I'm damaged goods. That's a hard road to go down too, because that's hard to come back from once you start driving down that road of feeling that way. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, this is, and then kind of coming out the other end of, there's like female friends of mine and my sister who's kind of seen me grow as a person since all this happened. and are really proud that I am more open when I have conversations with them. So it becomes this thing of like, it's been a negative and then it's been a positive again, because people do appreciate the openness and the vulnerability.
I got to think too, the fact that you're so upfront about it is so big too. And for better or for worse, I guess, right? And I see both of you kind of like go, yeah.
I mean, I definitely had those experiences where I got a lot of anxiety and I got really depressed thinking that I scared someone off with my story. That was a really horrible feeling of that, you know, someone was attracted to me and wanted to go out with me. And then I unloaded all this stuff and they were just, no, that's a lot. And that's a really tough sinking feeling to get over.
Sure.
But, you know, by the same token, you're probably weeding out people that don't want to be your friend or your partner. And, you know, this is the new version of for better or worse.
Right. Well, and I think that's the thing though, you know, it's that, and this is, you know, obviously again, kind of the oddball case here, but, you know, but I feel like it does kind of go the same for all cancer patients, is that, yeah, it's a big bomb to drop when you tell someone you have cancer, because it is, especially depending on how early you tell them. You know, I've definitely been in the same, your shoes, my friend, and told someone way too early. But at the same time, it's so hard to not separate it, because for so long, it's a part of your everyday life. So it doesn't seem like a bombshell to drop, because for you, it's something you deal with every second of every day. Now, to the average person, you're basically lugging a locomotive-sized bag behind you. But to you, you're just like, this is the new normal. This is what I deal with. And I'm sorry that it scares you. But, you know, and again, there's obviously a balancing act there, but it is, you know, so it's, I feel you, my friend.
It becomes one of those things that's hard to talk around too.
Right.
Because it's like, you know, it's like going on a job interview. It's like, oh, what's this gap here? Went on vacation or something? I don't know.
Why do you care if you get health insurance?
Yeah. And then it becomes the same thing with, like, you know, dating or any kind of conversation. If you're trying to avoid cancer coming up and it's like, oh, why are you going to Denver next week? Like, seeing some friends that I have stuff in common with. Like, it becomes
going to a conference.
All these lies by omission. And then you don't feel good about that. Because on some level, you know, it's a lie by omission is still just a lie. So you don't want to do that.
Right.
You want to try to be as honest as possible, even if you're trying to maybe avoid it on, like, the first time you meet someone.
Isn't having cancer hard enough? Right, we have to do the fucking tiptoe around dating people. Like, sorry, this is my life. This is what I'm dealing with right now.
I don't know. Like, I would rather drop the bomb early so then I don't have to have anxiety about dropping the bomb at some point. I'd rather just drop it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. When you really get down the road of, I mean, I think you always have feelings when you start going out with someone for the first time, but when you're in date 6 to 10 or whatever that number ends up being, it's a whole nother ball game, right?
Yeah. I think that would be that would be really anxiety inducing to wait to tell them about stuff.
And that's the other thing too, is, you know, if you wait too long and that person's like, you have this big thing going on in your life and you didn't tell me, you're like, well, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. What do you want me to say?
Yeah, because then it becomes like, that's bad communication to not reveal major life stuff.
Right.
Even though, by the same token, it's like, whenever it's come up on some of these sessions before about, like, dating post-cancer and anything, you know, there's no one size fits all. So whatever people are comfortable with, if people want to reveal it on the first date, I say do it. If people don't want to mention it for a while, I say it's your life. You should do whatever you feel comfortable with.
You know, because I would
get it out of the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I would definitely say, you know, not do it like right on the rip, but at the same time, it depends on where you're at, because the girl that I'm seeing right now, who is a wonderful human being, literally the first thing I told her was, I'm having surgery in 2 weeks for my 4th cancer that I just got diagnosed with 4 months ago. Don't know what's going to happen afterwards. You want to go rock climbing with me as much as you want in the next 2 weeks.
That's a little.
And we're dating 9 months later. So, you know, I don't.
The intensity works sometimes, apparently.
Oh my goodness. Well, on that extreme note, Steve, we always ask everyone to come on, this will be your last question, I think, for now, but what's your elephant in the room when it comes to cancer? If there is an elephant, I feel like the last three people we've asked this question to, they're like, well, I haven't heard of elephants actually, but just curious to see if there is an elephant in the room that you are like always thinking about when it comes to cancer. And maybe we've even touched on it today, but.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of touched on some of them, but because some of them are so part and parcel, like so many things are bundled together. So, I mean, there's anxiety as a whole, but then there's the financial toxicity of things. There's worrying about that because, knock on wood, I'm in remission right now, but if things come back, like, what will that do to everything? What will that do to like finances? And with COVID now, it's even more treacherous for everybody. Like people are losing jobs and dealing with that situation. So it does become this game of the narrative keeps shifting of life, right? Just like, wait, what am I going to do about money? What am I going to do for work? Like, and then if, things are okay-ish now, but then if things slide downhill, like I don't want to be screwed. And then I think that is just kind of the elephant in the room. That's always the shoe you don't want to drop.
Right.
And that's why I've been totally radicalized on the healthcare front in the last few years. Because if that didn't cost so much money and if insurance wasn't so much of a mess for everybody, then it wouldn't cause me so much anxiety. But I think goes for the whole community.
Sure. I don't think there's any arguments between us on that one. It's the anxiety piece factored in with the financial toxicity. It's a lot, right? And I know Brother Steve, I think I'm in like a monastery type, Brother Steve, but the same thing applies, right? And there's so many people that are involved with this. And it is terrifying. And you have enough to worry about, let alone the insurance side of things too, right? I think that's such a big thing.
Yeah, like I had insurance. That was part of my anxiety last year too. I was struggling with health insurance stuff. And I was going through the same cycle of getting really frustrated, getting nowhere with it, and then giving up. And then it'll be like, well, I didn't get anywhere. I still haven't figured this out. And I still need to have a follow-up. I still got to get back on my meds. I've got to take care of this. But,
right.
Sometimes it's really draining and hard to be your own advocate. So I kept just cycling into like, oh, I'll do it next week. I can't deal with it right now. And that kept cycling around until early this year. Funnily enough, right before COVID, I kind of did get health insurance all worked out, thankfully.
Good. That would have been a whole different conversation right now.
Yeah, talk about this crazy year because, it feels quaint to talk about how last year was really hard for me when this year has been relentless on not just me, but everybody, just the country, the world, the community at large. Just personally, I had a really hard time last year. And then this year, right before COVID hit, I got health insurance worked out and I got back on anti-anxiety meds. And things quickly started to look up, even though, checking my phone for the news, things were looking grim. But for me personally, it was like, oh, well, it's a good thing I'm going into this with with my meds back and having my follow-up done, and I can at least sleep a little bit easier at night on those fronts. Now I just have to worry about this global pandemic.
Minor detail, right?
Yeah. If it's not one anxiety, it's another.
Right, for sure. So I think it's safe to say if you had to pick one elephant in the room, anxiety, and then everything that builds up to that anxiety.
Yeah. I just think like anxiety is the umbrella that like a bunch of different cancer-related things fall under.
Fair enough.
Finances, it's all connected.
Different steps on the ladder.
Yeah. Anxiety is the big one.
Got it.
But, thankfully for myself this year, I've learned to manage it a lot better than I was doing in the last couple of years. But that's what I would say too, that might scare some newly diagnosed people is, I think President Obama said this, and he wasn't talking about cancer, but he was talking about like progress, and how progress is never this like straight, you know, uphill line. Like that's not how history or how life works. And I can say that too. Like it's been a roller coaster where I've, you know, been doing well, and then I had a really tough year with things where I was at. And then I've come, you know, kind of come out the other side and been doing well again. And we just have to be vigilant and advocate for ourselves to
For sure.
do the best we can and try to be happy.
So I guess on that note, Steve, I lied. I'm going to give you one more question. What would be your one piece of advice then for someone, if you had to say something to your younger self, what would that advice be?
I think I would tell my younger self to not be afraid of the narrative of life shifting so much, because it's really discombobulating. But, you know, cancer or no cancer, it happens to people all the time. People have dreams like, I'm going to go into this field, and it doesn't happen for whatever reason, or, you know, careers flame out, or people think they're going to marry this person. It doesn't happen. And then there's that thing of having to start over in life that feels, you know, disruptive, and it feels like you're starting all over and you feel like you're behind in life. And even before cancer, I would have those moments where it's like, oh man, I should be here right now, and I'm not here, and it's frustrating. And then cancer just totally just like jumbles that up and like throws it into the outfields. And yeah, I know it's really hard, but there is this thing of you kind of have to learn how to roll with the punches and kind of, you know, learn how to kind of deal with things and how to, you know, learn how to be happy and how to have fun despite the nature of things kind of being messy. You know, whatever cancer people have, whatever treatment they're going through, I think there's ways we can help out and make it fun. And I think this year has been a real lesson in it of we're all stuck at home. A lot of us are dealing with cancer treatment and anxiety and depression. And, you know, we've done craft nights, trivia nights, Zoom meetups, and we've all kind of been here for each other in this weird virtual way, kind of muddling through this. But I think having other people to kind of help you get through life is the key thing. Is, yeah, roll with the punches and reach out to people.
Cool. Very well said. I think that's awesome advice. And heck, here we are, right? Virtually having these conversations. I don't think we would have been doing this if it wasn't for COVID.
I've hung out with Steve more this year than any other year prior. And it's all been via the magic of Zoom.
It's amazing how that
Don't worry, my friend. I will give you a gigantic hug and jump on you sometime soon.
Yeah, that's the thing. I know I've mentioned this to a few friends in the community. One of the things that really keeps me going throughout this whole thing is, and I know it's going to take some exposure therapy and it's going to take us a while to get there, but there will be a day, and hopefully we're all well and alive to see it, like whether it's CancerCon or an Elephants and Tea event, there's going to be something where we're going to be in the same room together. Mm-hmm. And I will be able to hug people I've only met or hung out with via Zoom, and that is going to feel, I mean, it was fun before, but now after this year, I think it's going to feel totally
the anticipations and like, I couldn't agree more.
The next heart hug from Stephen, I'm probably just going to hug for like 17 minutes and just weep.
The hearts will definitely come into alignment then, my friend.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's like, as we were talking about, it's totally okay to hug Steve for 17 minutes and cry.
I think that's fair and necessary.
For sure.
Well, Steve, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
Good talk. I always love talking to both of you guys.
I mean, I know we could keep going all night with our cocktails, which you forgot to bring one, so we'll make fun of you later.
Well, I'll be healthy and just hydrate.
There you go. Hydration's crucial. So, Steve, thanks again, man, for chatting with us on Spilling Tea with the G's, and we really appreciate it, man. All righty. Till next time, everybody.